You've been taught to be kind, expressive, and available, but still, you're ignored, ghosted, and left wondering, what went wrong? The problem? You're playing by rules designed to make you weak. Today, I'll show you the real game, the hidden rules women never tell you, but always respond to. Master these, and you'll never chase again. They'll come to you. In every human interaction, there exists a silent hierarchy. Beneath the smiles, compliments, and gestures lies the primal language of power. It speaks through posture, tone, presence, and most of all, consequence. The man who understands this doesn't compete for attention. He draws it to himself by the force of his gravity. For women, attraction is rarely rooted in superficial traits alone. It's rooted in how a man shapes the environment around him. Power, not words, becomes the seduction. When a man enters a room and people shift, conversations quiet, glances are stolen, tension rises. That is the language of power. It's not about being loud, flamboyant, or overly assertive. True power is silent. It's the calm of a storm, waiting to strike. It doesn't announce itself. It simply is. A powerful man doesn't need validation. His actions already speak for him. His choices carry weight. His movements are calculated. His silence is deliberate. And this silent power? It drives curiosity. It creates desire. In women, it triggers a biological pull they themselves may not fully understand. Power breeds certainty, and certainty in a man is intoxicating. She doesn't just want safety or money. She seeks emotional leadership, a man who needs nothing, because he becomes the man worth having. His life isn't centered around her presence. Rather, her presence must qualify to fit into his world. This flips the usual dynamic on its head. When a man exudes power, women don't evaluate if they want him. They begin to wonder, how do I get chosen by him? If you're enjoying this, don't forget to comment below. Which part resonates with you most so far? And if you want more content like this, subscribe now to stay one step ahead in the game. This power is not limited to status or wealth, though both can amplify it. It begins internally. A man with a mission, direction, and control over his reality radiates power in every gesture. He doesn't talk excessively, because he knows words without authority are cheap. He doesn't over-explain himself, because he understands. To explain is often to submit. He moves like someone who knows where he's going, even if others don't yet understand the path. This is not arrogance. This is command. In this context, attractiveness becomes less about physical features and more about psychological dominance. A woman might be drawn to a handsome man, but she becomes obsessed with the one whose eyes seem to see right through her. The one who doesn't laugh nervously. The one who doesn't ask for permission. The one who listens more than he speaks. Not because he's passive, but because he's measuring, watching, calculating. That's the man who cannot be toyed with. That's the man whose approval must be earned. And earning it makes it far more valuable than anything given freely. Too many men operate under the belief that, to attract a woman, they must flatter her, compliment her, show vulnerability and openness. While those traits may earn appreciation, they rarely spark obsession. Women are not drawn to men who follow them. They are drawn to men they cannot fully understand. Men who seem like they could walk away at any moment. Not out of cruelty, but out of self-possession. The man who has options doesn't beg. And the man who never begs, paradoxically becomes the one most wanted. To embody power is to become a mirror that reflects back a woman's uncertainty. She begins to question her worth in your eyes. She seeks to close that gap. That psychological tension, created by your indifference, becomes the very fuel for her interest. It's in this dynamic, where she leans in, while you stand still, that the game reverses. Suddenly, it's not you chasing beauty. It's beauty chasing you. And that, my friend, is where real power lives. This doesn't mean cruelty or manipulation. It means embodying a presence so steady, so complete, that others are forced to calibrate around you. You don't need to control others directly. You control yourself so fully, they instinctively respond. Power does not ask. It commands, without force. It seduces, without effort. Understand this. A man can have wealth, good looks, even charm. But without power, he will still be beneath the man who possesses silent, unshakable control over himself. Women intuitively detect this. They may test it. They may challenge it. But ultimately, they submit to it. They do not crave perfection. They crave the tension between risk and safety, danger and control, and nothing creates that more than a man who can walk away without flinching. Because he stands for something higher than approval. Power resides. Desire follows. It's not a coincidence. It's biology. It's nature. And it's yours to command. If you have the discipline to master yourself first, the world will follow. So will she. It feeds on absence. The human mind is not wired to crave what's always available. It's drawn to what it can't quite have. Scarcity is the most powerful psychological lever in attraction. And yet most men sabotage themselves by being too available, too eager, too present. In doing so, they strip themselves of the very value that would make a woman pursue them. When something is constantly within reach, it becomes ordinary, predictable, dull. But when it vanishes without warning, when it can't be grasped at will, the mind begins to obsess. It searches for closure. It seeks resolution. This isn't just romance. It's psychology. What we can't fully possess, we idealize. And what we idealize, we pursue with irrational intensity. Want to attract instead of chase? Drop a in the comments if this resonates. And make sure to subscribe to learn how to apply scarcity with precision, not confusion. Scarcity triggers imagination. And imagination is far more powerful than reality in the game of attraction. A woman doesn't dream of the man who's constantly groveling for her attention. She dreams of the one who appears in moments, leaves an imprint, and vanishes again. The one who doesn't answer right away. The one who doesn't need to be constantly seen to remain unforgettable. His absence becomes louder than another man's words. His silence echoes louder than compliments. His unpredictability injects tension into her thoughts, forcing her to wonder. What is he doing? Who is he with? Does he even think about me? Scarcity creates a void, and the void invites fantasy. But the man who's always present gives no room for mystery, and therefore, no fuel for imagination. The man who withholds his presence is not forgotten. He becomes mythologized. His image is shaped not by who he is in constant exposure, but by who he becomes in moments of absence. That's where true obsession is born. In the mind of a woman who can't predict your next move, and therefore, can't stop thinking about it. Most men confuse availability with loyalty. They believe being constantly present proves their value. But in reality, it only exposes their need. And neediness is the death of desire. It signals a lack of options, a lack of self-control, and most importantly, a lack of status. A man who is too available communicates that his time holds no weight, that he has nowhere better to be, that his attention is cheap. And when something is cheap, it is never truly desired. Scarcity, on the other hand, signals abundance elsewhere. It tells her, my world is full. If you want a place in it, you'll have to earn it. This dynamic creates a powerful reversal. The man who is hard to get becomes a challenge. And women don't value what comes without effort. The more effort she must expend to reach you, the more valuable you become in her eyes. She begins to invest, emotionally, mentally, even physically. And once she's invested, detachment becomes harder. She's not just attracted now. She's entangled. Scarcity doesn't mean ignoring her completely. It's a strategic dance, appearing just enough to spark interest, then disappearing to let it grow. You leave traces, not trails. You respond when it suits you, not when expected. Your time is not an open buffet. It's an exclusive invitation. She doesn't get to consume your presence whenever she wants. She must qualify for it. This is how obsession is built. Not by overwhelming her with affection, but by creating a subtle lack, a gap she feels compelled to fill. The modern world glorifies instant communication and constant connection. But psychological truth? It predates technology. No matter how fast the world spins, the rules of human attraction remain ancient. A man who resists the pull of constant accessibility becomes rare. And rarity breeds intrigue. Intrigue becomes fascination. And fascination, if carefully sustained, becomes a desire too powerful to ignore. Scarcity also introduces unpredictability. If she always knows what you're doing, when you're free, how you'll respond, you become emotionally flat. But if your time is fragmented, your replies are delayed, your schedule unknown, she begins to chase. Not because you're playing games, but because you're living a life not dictated by her attention. You're not orbiting her, you are your own sun. And she begins to revolve around you. trying to stay within your light. When a man masters the power of scarcity, he no longer needs to convince or explain. His distance speaks more than his presence ever could. His silence becomes louder than noise. And every return becomes a reward, not an expectation. This is where the dynamic fully shifts. She is no longer the one being pursued. She becomes the pursuer, not because you tricked her into chasing, but because you became something she could not easily possess. And what can't be possessed becomes impossible to forget. What's your biggest takeaway from this part? Drop it in the comments. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. This is just the beginning of mastering true masculine influence. Every interaction between a man and a woman is a subtle negotiation of power. Not through obvious words or brute force, but through the invisible architecture of the frame. The frame is the context, the lens through which the moment is defined. And here's the truth: whoever controls the frame controls the game. The one who sets it wins. Before even making a move, a weak man walks into a conversation hoping to be liked. He reacts, he adjusts, he mirrors, he softens his tone, he measures his words based on how she responds. What he doesn't realize is, by doing so, he's already lost control. He's inside her frame, her world, her definitions, her expectations. In that position, he can only respond, never lead. He becomes reactive instead of directive, subordinate instead of sovereign. And here's the part most men miss. Women do not submit to men who submit to them psychologically. They submit to the man who imposes his reality so powerfully. She wants to live inside it. Frame is not just about conversation. It's about energy, presence, and mental dominance. A woman will test constantly, not to argue, but to probe for weakness. She'll challenge you, not for debate, but to feel the strength of your emotional control. If you let her dictate the tone, set the topic, define the rules of engagement, you've surrendered the frame. You've become a participant in her story, not the author of your own. A man without his own narrative? He's disposable. A man who controls the frame doesn't get flustered. He doesn't over-explain. He's rooted in his worldview and doesn't seek validation for it. He makes statements, not questions. He sets the rhythm of the interaction, and she follows, not because she's forced to, but because she feels the pull of calm authority. A strong frame doesn't push. It invites surrender without demand. And surrender, when voluntary, becomes desire. Frame control also defines what's acceptable, what's desirable, what's respected. If a woman tests you with drama or manipulation, and you respond with anger, pleading, or over-explaining, you've entered her frame. But if you meet her emotional chaos with steady eyes, minimal words, and composed detachment, she recalibrates. She realizes she's not the dominant energy in the room. Your refusal to be moved becomes its own language. A statement that says, "I'm not a man who dances to emotional fluctuations. I am the stillness that cannot be disrupted, and therefore cannot be ignored." Leadership in relationships, like in politics, is never granted. It is seized by those who define the rules. If you're not defining the interaction, you're being defined by it. If you're not leading the emotional tone, you're being led by hers. Women aren't repelled by assertiveness. They're repelled by doubt, by the man who looks to her for direction, the man who needs permission to speak freely, act confidently, or walk away when disrespected. He has already placed himself beneath her, not by force, but by lack of presence. In the silent war of desire, the most powerful man is not the one who expresses the most love, nor the one who makes grand gestures of affection. It's the man who remains emotionally controlled, whose feelings are not easily swayed, who holds himself like a fortress against emotional chaos. While others are dragged into the whirlwind of romance, he remains composed, watching, weighing, and waiting. Emotional detachment is not apathy. It's strategic restraint, and in the world of seduction, it's a weapon far more potent than charm or passion. Most men bleed emotion at the first sign of attention. They confuse openness with strength. They equate vulnerability with value. They talk too much, feel too deeply, too soon, and collapse the mystery that could have bound her to them. Desire is not born from emotional exposure. It's born from distance, from the mystery of the unknown, from her inability to predict what you feel, what you think, or how much power she truly holds over you. Yes, A woman wants to feel. She seeks emotional highs and lows. But if you give her all your emotion too quickly, she grows bored. The thrill is gone. The puzzle is solved. The man who hasn't mastered his emotional state, he becomes a toy, a predictable figure she can move at will. But the man who can look her in the eye and reveal nothing, not because he can't, but because he chooses not to, he becomes the obsession. She begins to chase his emotional center. She wants to unlock him. And in that pursuit, she invests herself deeper than she ever would. For the man who wears his heart on his sleeve, emotional detachment means you're never too high, never too low. If she pulls away, you do not chase. If she tests you, you don't react. If she cries, screams, or retreats into silence, you remain unaffected, not because you're cold, but because you've mastered the internal discipline to never be moved unless you choose to be. This unshakable calm is what separates the ordinary from the powerful. It signals you are not dependent on her approval, not swayed by her moods. You are centered in yourself, and that center cannot be breached. This creates an imbalance, an emotional tension that pulls her in, while she spirals in doubt, overanalyzing your words, wondering what you feel. You remain the question mark. And in romance, the question mark is always more powerful than the exclamation point. She cannot fully access your emotions. She senses you could walk away at any moment, without collapse. So, she leans in. She tries harder. She opens herself more fully. Her desire becomes tied to the enigma you embody. Emotional detachment also grants you power in conflict. Most men, when faced with arguments, raise their voices, get defensive, try to prove their point. But the detached man? He listens without flinching. He speaks slowly, precisely. He doesn't need to win, because he doesn't feel threatened. His calmness frustrates and fascinates. She may scream, accuse, withdraw, hoping to trigger a reaction. But when none comes, her emotional weapons turn inward. She begins to question her tactics and herself. She wonders, why isn't he responding like other men? That psychological tension makes her feel you're stronger, higher in value, and ultimately, less available. And the less available you seem, the more she is pulled toward you. The root of this power lies in self-sufficiency. The emotionally detached man isn't numb. He simply doesn't depend on others to define his emotional reality. His validation is internal. His mood is self-directed. That creates a fortress around him, one that protects and elevates him. While others crumble when love is withheld, he remains unaffected. While others beg for attention, he disappears into purpose. While others plead to be understood, he speaks less and observes more. Emotional detachment is not suppression. It is mastery. To feel deeply, yet reveal selectively. To have the range of a king and the restraint of a strategist. Women aren't drawn to the man who pleads for connection. They're drawn to the man who values his solitude so much that any connection must be exceptional to be accepted. She doesn't want to be your emotional crutch. She wants to earn her way inside the fortress. In a world full of men desperate to be felt, to be seen, to be understood, the man who withholds becomes a relic of power. He stands out. He radiates strength. And even if he says little, even if he shows less, his absence of emotional dependence becomes the very reason she craves his presence. Power in relationships isn't maintained by affection. It's maintained by perception. And the most potent perception you can create in a woman's mind is this: she is being treated like the most special woman in the world. While silently understanding, she is not irreplaceable. This contradiction, the illusion of exclusivity, layered over the unspoken awareness of disposability, is the sharpest double-edged sword in seduction. It keeps her emotionally invested, constantly striving, and subtly insecure, in a way that fuels her attachment to you. Most men fail here. They pick one of two extremes. Some men treat women like queens, showering them with affection, validation, and emotional loyalty in every moment. But those men are quickly taken for granted. Their devotion, though sincere, lacks mystery. It reveals too much, too soon. And once a woman knows she's the center of your world, she starts exploring options outside of it. Other men go the opposite route. Cold, indifferent, emotionally distant. They may spark curiosity for a while, but they never create emotional safety. And eventually, she retreats. searching for a man who gives her the illusion of being rare. The man who makes her feel unique, but shows, without ever saying it, that she is ultimately replaceable. He becomes the one who dominates her psychology. She lives in emotional duality. One moment, she feels like the only woman who's cracked your inner world. The next, she senses, if I mess up, if I step wrong, he'll move on, without flinching. This dynamic isn't about cruelty. It's about leverage. Leverage keeps her engaged, attentive, hooked. To create this seductive paradox, your actions must be intentional. Be kind, be attentive, let her taste the experience of being chosen. But never let her forget, she wasn't your only option. Your compliments? Rare, but precise. You tell her she's beautiful. Never like you're in awe. You show desire, but never hunger. You offer your time, but not your full availability. These are not mixed signals. They are calculated impressions. They draw her in, while never letting her feel fully secure. Because security kills passion. When a woman knows exactly where she stands, her imagination dies. But when she senses that her position is determined by how she acts, how she treats you, how she makes you feel, she works to keep it. She becomes more feminine, more attentive, more seductive, all from one silent message. You're special, but not essential. This balance, treating her like royalty, but never becoming her servant, must also show up in how you live your life. You must be seen as a man in motion, a man with purpose, options, and direction. With or without her, she must witness a life that is full, filled with movement, friendships, ambitions, and yes, even the subtle presence of other women who would gladly take her place. Your presence must feel like a gift, not an entitlement, because the moment she believes your world revolves around her, you've lost the game. Even in your most intimate moments, the message must remain crystal clear. I enjoy you, but I'm not obsessed with you. I connect with you, but I do not collapse into you. I care, but I am not controlled. That is where true dominance resides. Not in being cold or distant, but in being emotionally sovereign. You can love, without being enslaved by love. You can enjoy her affection, without needing it to function. You are the center. She orbits around you, not the other way around. And in social settings, this is even more important. If she sees you talk to other women, calmly, confidently, without desperation, she sees your value as publicly recognized. If you speak of your past, without bitterness, but with clarity and strength, she knows others have wanted you, but none have tamed you. If you move with silent discipline, hold high standards, and carry calm detachment from external validation, she realizes something powerful. Her access to you is not automatic, it is earned, and it must be maintained. Eventually, this dynamic settles in her subconscious. She feels the pull to be perfect in your eyes, not because you asked for it, but because you've subtly implied someone else could always step in. She is not terrified of being replaced, but she is aware of it, and that awareness shapes her behavior. She gives more, she engages deeper, she meets your standards, because she knows, I'm in the presence of a man who could walk away, not out of spite, but out of principle. This is the highest level of psychological control. Not manipulation, but calibrated perception. You don't threaten abandonment. You don't reward obedience. You simply are the kind of man who values himself so highly that no woman, no matter how beautiful, can ever become your entire world. And yet, in treating her like a queen, while never needing her to rule your kingdom, you inspire her deepest desire to remain your chosen one, even if she knows she was never the only one. Let us know, what's one way you show you're the center of your own world? Tap subscribe now, because in part 12, we'll break down the final shift, how you stop chasing validation and start commanding loyalty. Just by being rare, in a world where most men are taught to please, to prove, and to pursue endlessly, the man who masters influence operates differently. He doesn't chase validation, he cultivates gravity. He knows that power in relationships isn't built on emotional indulgence, nor on constant availability. It's built on controlled mystery, strategic detachment, and the ability to shape perception without ever revealing his full hand. You've now uncovered the 5 hidden rules that separate the forgettable from the unforgettable. And no, these are not cheap tricks. They are psychological principles rooted in the primal nature of human desire. You've learned how power, desire, and uncertainty combine to create obsession. You've seen that the man who leads, without demanding, who sets the frame, without debate, who withholds emotion, without being cold, and who treats her like royalty, while keeping her replaceable, is the man who doesn't ask for women to beg. He creates the conditions where they need to. This isn't about manipulation, it's about positioning. It's about becoming the man who naturally commands attention, devotion, and loyalty, not because he demands it, but because he is a rare force in a world full of weak negotiation. So play by these rules, not with arrogance, but with quiet conviction, because the result isn't just attraction, it's power that endures, even in silence. Subscribe now so you never miss the next strategy for power, purpose, and psychological mastery. And drop a comment. Which rule hit hardest for you, and how will you apply it? You are the rare force now. She doesn't forget you. She can't. You've become unforgettable.